So I'm going to show you how money can make you happy. Some people will tell you that it can't, but I'm going to show you how they are wrong. And there's so many people who are busy telling you how to get more money or how to be rich that nobody tells you what to do with the money when you have it. There's all that like practical common sense advice around budgeting and saving and investing, but nobody says if you want to be happy, then this is what you need to do with your money. It's just kind of the practical tips of how to get it or how to organize it. And maybe people just think that it's obvious that if you have money, it's obvious how it brings happiness and what you should and shouldn't do. But if you've ever seen the story of a rich person in the paper, or you've read a biography, or you've heard stories, you know that it's actually not obvious, and that a lot of people with money manage to screw themselves up. So what I'm going to do is three things for you in this video. I'm going to reveal some global research that proves how money can bring you happiness. I'm going to share about some experiments that have been done to test that out. And then finally, what we're going to do is connect that with some words of Jesus to bring it all together, so you can leave this video knowing exactly what you need to do in order for money to bring you happiness. Welcome to my channel. My name's Derek, and for the last 3 decades I've been helping people grow and develop in their faith, and in this channel I'm giving out tools and insights to help you live a deeper and more meaningful life. So how can money make you happy? What is it you can do with the money that you have in order to generate the maximum amount of happiness? Well, I wonder what you're doing with your money right now, what you're spending it on, how much you're spending. Are you investing it or saving it? What decisions are you making? Because at the moment, that's your answer to the question. Yeah, nobody takes the money and thinks, right, how can this make me miserable? We make decisions on what we think is best for us. So however you're answering that question, what you're doing right now is how you think the answer to that question is. And here's the secret. Most of us are not very good with the money question. Most of us are not very good at using money to bring us happiness. And we tend to generate two negative emotions. And I'll explain why we're not very good in a minute. But let me tell you the two emotions that most of us experience. And this will help you realize that you're not the only one. That the first emotion that many of us feel is a sense of guilt and a sense of shame that comes with regret. That we look back and we waste our money, or we get ourselves into trouble because there's debt, and we make decisions in the moment that are not best for us, and we look back and we got all these feelings of guilt and shame. But there's a second emotion that we experience, which is around dissatisfaction, that even when we make decisions and that was the right thing to do, or that was a good thing to do, I don't really regret buying that thing, it doesn't quite satisfy us. It doesn't bring the joy and lasting contentment that we thought that it would. So let me show you what to do instead if you want your money to bring you happiness. Well, Gallup, who is this global research company, just did a massive piece of research. They're just gigantic in the amount of people that they talk to. And they surveyed 230,000 people across 136 countries. Right, I can't even get my numbers right. So you've got different countries, you've got rich countries, poor countries, countries right across the world. And they surveyed people about all sorts of things to do with their money and their income and their job and their satisfaction and happiness and circumstances and all sorts of different things. And one of the things they discovered is this, that those people that had given money to charity in the previous month had significantly higher happiness than people who hadn't. Those people in previous month that had given some money to charity were significantly happier than those that haven't, and that the happiness had gone up so much it was like the equivalent of somebody's income doubling. Let me just say that again. It was the equivalent of their income doubling. Who wouldn't want their income to double? Yeah, we think that if my income would double, and maybe we might do that, and we try and invest in some crypto, or we try and get a side job, or we double our hours, or we try and get promotion. We would do all sorts of things in order to double our income, because we think if our income went up, then our happiness would. But what they're saying in the survey, what they actually discovered, is those people who just give to charity the previous month, the amount of happiness they won, it was similar to people whose income had doubled. So it's pretty hard to double your income but it's not that hard to give to charity, but the happiness is the same. And Elizabeth Dunn, Professor Elizabeth Dunn from the University of British Columbia, she'd done a lot of research and she was involved in that Gallup research. And so they decided to test it out and done some experiments, just quite small experiments. And they did it in lots of different ways. But essentially what they would do is they would go to people and give them an envelope. So they'd stop people in the street and they'd give them one of two types of envelopes. And one envelope would say they'd all have the same amount of money in. So on one experiment that I read, there was $20 in the envelope that they give to people, but there was two different instructions that people got, two different groups. And one instruction was, I want you to go and treat yourself and buy something nice with this $20 and come back in an hour and tell us what you bought. And the other group was given the $20 and they said, I want you to go and use this money for somebody else, give it to them or buy something for somebody and then come back in an hour and report on what you did. And then as they would come back consistently, they did this in lots of different ways and they tested lots of different variables. But the research proved time and time again that those who took that $20 and used it for other people had far the greater joy and happiness than those who used it on themselves. And many, many years ago, Jesus said this in Acts 20, verse 35. And even if you don't know the Bible and the whole God stuff, you might have heard this phrase, and it originally comes from Jesus. And this is what he said. He said, it's better to give than to receive. It's better to give than receive. And we might think, well, yeah, it's better for the world or it's better for other people. But Jesus is saying, actually, it's better for you if you give rather than you receive. If you've got a lump of money, if you want the most joy and happiness out of that lump of money, if you give it to other people, your happiness and your joy and your meaning and satisfaction will be much higher. You'll get a much better return on the investment. So why don't we all do it? Why don't we all do it? And it's like our desires are warped. They're a bit messed up, and the Bible would talk about this as like sin, this idea that we're a bit distorted inside. And we're distorted because the happiness that comes from giving is in disguise. It's like hidden. We don't see it even when we think about giving. That what we see is a desire for something. So if I buy this, or if I get that new car or that house or that takeaway or buy that gift for myself or whatever, that we crave it because we think there's joy and satisfaction on the other side. And if we see about giving money away, we might think that that's a moral thing to do, that's the good thing to do, but we don't see the joy on the other side because inside we've got this distortion around our desires. The Bible says it's sin, that we're actually a bit distorted inside and we don't see it. There's a thing that they call loss aversion that psychologists have discovered, and the thing that we want to avoid is losing anything. So when we give money away, we imagine that we're losing something and we don't see the gain on the other side. It's like we're distorted. And in a sense, our actions have got to almost be acts of faith, that we trust what Jesus says, that it is better to receive, it's better to give rather than receive. There's another proverb in Proverbs 11 verse 24 in the Bible, and this, I just love this so much. It's in the Message version of the Bible, and it says this. It says, the world of the generous gets larger and larger, but the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. That the world of the generous gets larger and larger, that the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. And I remember many years ago, I was running a youth group, and we had this youth weekend, and we were teaching the teenagers about kind of generosity, and we were covering lots of things, but that was one of the things that we talked about. And we give them this little challenge. We challenge them to do a little act of generosity to someone, a bit of random kindness to someone, and we give them these little cards. And the cards, we said, when you've done it, give them this card. And the card said this, it's called generosity attack on the side. It said, you've been attacked by generosity. To find out more, contact your local church. And that was all it said. And they all had these cards. And then we did all the farewells, and we wrapped up and we packed up and we headed home. We were heading home in the minibus, and we stopped at a service station on the way home. Everyone was hungry, so we went to the service station and we were queuing at McDonald's to get it, and we're all in a line, all the young people, and I was at the back of it, and there's a bit of commotion towards the front, and I'm thinking, what is going on there? And then I see one of our young people walk up to the McDonald's counter next to this young girl, and they start talking, and she was quite pretty, and it's like, oh yeah, he's probably just chatting her up and stuff, but she's looking confused, and I was like, what is he saying to her? And then they talk to the McDonald's staff and he's looking confused. And then eventually I see the member of our youth group hand over some money to the person behind the counter. And then I realise, and then he gives her this card, and I realise he's doing a generosity tap right there. And then he runs back to all his mates and they all start giggling and laughing and they're all a bit hyper about it. And I was like, oh, that's really sweet, isn't it? That's really sweet. They've thought about this idea and they've done it. Anyway, we all get out of McDonald's, we head back to the bus and we're driving along the motorway and we're heading home. And then we overtake this car and the young people in the bus look down and the girl whose McDonald's they've bought is in the back seat stuffing her face with fries. And then the bus just like erupts and all the young people move to the side of the bus and they're all at the windows, they're all waving their hands and they're all screaming and shouting. And this girl's just driving along and she glances to her right and she looks and there's all these crazy kids who are jumping up and all that. And she just kind of very shyly smiles and kind of waves. And the bus is just full of energy. And then we drive on and then one of the young people, he's got a bit of money, he pulls out money, he's got notes in his hand and he's like, what can we do with this? He's like, let's stop at the next service station. I want to buy someone their petrol. And at this point, I'm just like, this is getting out of hand. You know, they've took the challenge too much. What happens if I get home and maybe the mum's give him these notes for emergency and he's bought someone's petrol with it? So I was just like, oh, we haven't got time. And we just headed home. And I'm just like, we've just unleashed something. But the energy in that bus, and it wasn't just the person who'd bought the McDonald's, it kind of spread. And it was like the world of the generous gets larger and larger. It was just full of excitement. It was full of joy and it was full of possibilities. Whereas when you're at that place where you're craving and you're desiring for more, you know, you think about the sales. You know, in the country that I live in, UK, we get like the New Year sales after Christmas, and that's not a place of generosity. You see people like grabbing stuff and there's a harshness to it. And it seems that it's better to give than receive for us and for the people we're around. That as we do that, our world gets bigger and bigger, that we get access to joy. It's almost like that's what we were created for deep down in our soul. And I'm not got an agenda here for you to give to any charity particularly. I just want to encourage you and maybe to inspire you to think, well, why not today that you got some money out of your bank account and you hold it and you think, how do I get the most joy from this? By giving it to somebody else. Why don't you just buy a gift and drop it off? Who do you know that would really appreciate a voucher for meals or something like that? Or what cause really matters to you? Maybe, you know, young girls is a cause that really matters and you're going to find a charity and you're just going to support them or whatever it might be. That the world of the generous gets larger and larger, and don't you want to live a bigger and a greater life? Anyway, if that was useful and you want more content, why don't you subscribe, hit the notification so that you can keep getting more and more useful videos. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.